Well, turning now to the race for the White House, Republican candidate Donald Trump falsely questioned Kamala Harris's race today at an event. Trump was answering questions from journalists of the National Association of Black Journalists.
I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much, and she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She has always identified as a black woman. She went to a historically black college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black person.
Just to be clear, sir, do you believe that she is...
I think somebody should look into that too when you ask, continue in a very hostile, nasty tone.
The White House has called Trump's comments on the vice president's racial identity insulting.
As a person of color, as a black woman who is in this position that is standing before you at this podium behind this lectern, what he just said, what you just read out to me, is repulsive, it's insulting, and you know, no one has any right to tell someone who they are, how they identify. That is no one's right.
Our next guest is a former president of the National Association of Black Journalists. Bob Butler was in the room when Trump delivered that verbal attack against Harris, and he joins us now from Chicago. Bob, thanks so much for making time for us.
My pleasure.
So let's just start with the event itself. This convention, it is not Trump's usual crowd, not a friendly rally. It was a room full of journalists. What was it like in that room today?
Well, for the one thing, he was more than an hour late. I mean, we were supposed to start at 12:30. We started, probably about 1:30, something like that. Maybe a little bit earlier than that. But long lines to get in. You know, Secret Service is always going to be difficult standing in line. But the people inside the room were kind of hopeful to see what was going to happen, to see whether or not he could finally be, I guess, controlled by journalists. Because usually when he has these interviews, he talks over them, he berates them, he does things that we would not accept for anybody else, but he seems to always get away with it. So I think when he first came out, the very first question from ABC reporter Rachel Scott was, well, given all of your racist comments in the past, why should black people vote for you? And he immediately told her it was a rude question, a horrible question. He attacked her personally for asking the question. And the room, you could hear the gasp in the room.
Yeah, that was quite the moment to watch that, Bob, just on a screen, let alone being there in person. I wonder, I mean, I know you don't know the answer to this, but why do you think he agreed to take part in this conversation if it wasn't to really, reach the people who were there?
I don't know. Part of me thinks that it maybe is because he's looked at the recent polls, which I don't believe in polls, but he looked at these polls and found out all of a sudden he's not winning. And maybe this was a chance to attract more voters. He's always talks about how much he's supported by the black community. And he thought that by coming to the NABJ convention, which we have 3,600 black journalists in attendance at the convention, that he could actually score some points. It didn't go well.
Let's talk about that clip that we played with Trump questioning Kamala Harris's racial identity. I wonder what went through your mind when you heard that.
I was like, really? But another gasp in the room when he said that. I mean, it was audible. There were so many people in that the ballroom was full. And when he said that she's always identified as Indian, I'm like, I've known her for more than 20 years. When she was DA in San Francisco, that's where I work. And she's always been known as a black prosecutor, as a black person. I mean, she went to Howard University, an historically black college. She's an AKA sorority, which is a black sorority. So she's always claimed her blackness. I don't know what he's talking about.
Bob, you were there with a group of students. You were inside the student newsroom section, I understand.
Right.
What were the conversations like that you were having with the students after this panel?
Well, we were talking about our student projects, which is we bring college journalism students into the convention. and they covered the convention as regular reporters. And so we had a lot of talks with them before this happened about protocol. You don't boo, you don't cheer, you don't clap. And some of them were really kind of stunned. And we've seen this shtick from former President Trump many times on television, but to see it in person, I think I wasn't that surprised. But I think many of them were surprised because, I mean, they're younger. They don't really pay as much attention to politics as somebody like I do. So I think it really surprised them.
They got a essentially a front row seat to some of it today, Bob. We're going to be listening for Vice President Kamala Harris to do an event tonight and see if perhaps she responds to this. What do you think we should be listening out for? Do you think that she will acknowledge that this happened in some way?
I don't see how she cannot. I mean, one of the things about when President Biden decided to step aside and endorse Kamala Harris as vice president, is that all of a sudden for the last week and a half, she has, she's commanded the news feed. She's commanded, the conversation. And that's something with somebody like Donald Trump who doesn't like that. So he had to do something to get back in the news, to get back at the top of the news. He's done that. So I would imagine that she's going to say something about what he is. I mean, he put out a statement already saying that we saw the way Donald Trump is with his, alleged race. She called it racism, his race baiting, his bullying of the reporters on the panel. So I would be very surprised if she does not say anything about it, but who knows?
Okay, well, we'll be listening for sure, Bob. Really appreciate you bringing us into that room this afternoon. Thanks so much for your time.
Okay, Jacqueline, take care. Nice talking to you.
Yeah, you too. That was Bob Butler. He's a former president of the National Association of Black Journalists, and he joined us from Chicago.